There's something about silence that makes most people uncomfortable. We rush to fill it with noise, with words, with distractions, as if quiet is something to escape from. But what if silence isn't empty? What if it's full of answers we're too afraid to hear? This is not a story about saying less. It's about hearing more, about understanding the psychology behind stillness, and realizing what your silence truly says about you. Silence, the mirror of the mind. Silence is uncomfortable for one reason. It reflects us. In quiet, there's no music to drown your thoughts, no conversation to distract you from yourself, no sound to hide behind. And so, the truth rises. Psychologists call this the mirror effect of silence. When the external noise fades, the internal noise grows louder. Your mind begins to reveal what you've been avoiding, your doubts, your regrets, your unspoken fears. That's why so many people can't sit in silence, because silence forces self-confrontation. But here's the paradox. The people who can sit in silence are often the ones who know themselves the best, because they've learned that peace isn't found in the absence of noise, but in the acceptance of self. The psychology of stillness. In psychology, silence is not weakness, it's regulation. When you choose silence in a world addicted to reaction, you're exercising emotional control. The brain's amygdala, the part that processes fear and anger, loves chaos. It thrives on reaction, argument, attention. But when you stay silent, you starve that impulse. You take back power. Silence activates the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for rational thought and self-control. It's where wisdom lives. It's where patience is born. That's why emotionally intelligent people often pause before speaking. They don't respond to emotion, they observe it. And in that pause, they create space for clarity, for empathy, for understanding. What your silence says about you. Silence can mean many things, and it speaks louder than words. When you're silent in conflict, it doesn't always mean you're weak. It can mean you value peace more than being right. When you're silent in chaos, it doesn't mean you're indifferent. It means you've learned that energy is precious, and you won't waste it where it won't grow. When you're silent in the face of provocation, it doesn't mean you have nothing to say. It means your self-control is louder than someone else's ego. Silence says, I don't need to prove myself. I don't need to match your noise. I am grounded in my own calm. That's power. Not the kind that dominates, but the kind that transcends. The language of presence. True silence isn't the absence of sound. It's the presence of awareness. It's what happens when you listen, truly listen, without planning your next sentence. In relationships, silence can mean attention. When you stop talking, you start hearing what someone actually means, not just what they say. In psychology, this is called active silence, a state where your stillness communicates understanding. You're not passive, you're present. That presence changes everything. Because when someone feels seen in your silence, they trust you. And trust is the foundation of every connection that lasts. The silent confidence. There's a certain confidence in quiet people, a power that doesn't need to announce itself, because confidence isn't volume, it's certainty. The loudest person in the room is often the most unsure. They speak to be heard, but the calm one, they speak only when it matters. That's why silence often feels intimidating. It makes people reveal themselves. When you don't fill the space, others rush to do it. And in doing so, they expose their thoughts, their fears, their need to be validated. But the one who holds silence holds control. Not control over others, control over self. In leadership psychology, silence is strategy. It's the pause that creates tension, the moment that forces others to think deeper. In conversation, silence after a question creates weight. It signals that what was said matters. In negotiation, silence is a weapon. because people instinctively fill it, often revealing more than they intended. But silence should never be manipulation. It should be mastery. The mastery of presence, timing, and awareness. Knowing when to speak and when to simply be. The healing sound of silence. There's another kind of silence, the kind that heals. When you step away from noise, the screens, the conversations, the chaos, and simply exist in quiet spaces, your nervous system begins to reset. Your cortisol drops, your heartbeat slows, your mind starts to breathe again. Neuroscientists found that just 2 minutes of complete silence can create more relaxation than listening to music. Why? Because silence isn't just peaceful, it's restorative. In silence, the brain organizes thoughts, integrates emotions, and strengthens creativity. That's why great thinkers, writers, and creators often seek solitude. Because silence isn't emptiness, it's the birthplace of clarity. The fear of silence. But here's the truth most people won't admit. Silence can be terrifying, because when the noise stops, the mind speaks. It tells you what you've ignored. It reminds you who you are when no one's watching. It forces you to listen to your real self. And that's hard. That's why so many run from it. Scrolling, talking, distracting, escaping. But what if you stopped running? What if you sat in the silence long enough to understand what it's trying to say? Because silence doesn't punish you. It reveals you. Narrator, soft, steady. The message of silence. Silence is not absence, it's presence. It says, I am here, I am listening, I am enough, even without noise. Narrator, soft, steady. Your silence tells the world who you are, not through words, but through the peace you carry. The ability to stay calm when others panic, to listen when others argue, to wait when others rush. That is power. That is maturity. That is mastery of self. In the last 6 months, I've had 3 experiences of silent retreats. This has given me the opportunity to reflect on the power of silence and the range of responses it elicits from people. Some people embrace silence. I am one of them. I live with my husband and our 2 teenage children. All of them play different musical instruments. There's not a lot of quiet in our house. On the rare occasion I'm in the house on my own, the washing machine or dishwasher are usually running. I welcome silence. However, I have observed some people seem really uncomfortable at the prospect of a period of silence. On reflections at the end of silent retreat periods, some of these people come to enjoy the silence, but some don't. It's also possible to look forward to a period of silence only to find you can't engage with it, and I have had this experience in the past. What does this tell us about the functions of silence? The functions of silence. It is clear that silence has power. Like any power, it can be used to hurt or to heal, and perhaps this is why people respond so variably to it. For some people, silence means loneliness, isolation, or awkwardness. It can be used to indicate emotional withdrawal, disapproval, or even punishment. In our language, the word silence is often used with negative connotations. A conspiracy of silence, being given the silent treatment, lifting the veil of silence. In our busy, noisy world, many people seem to fear silence. Research is fairly clear that too much noise is bad for us. But does that mean that silence is good for us? Well, not necessarily. Silence is more than the absence of noise. However, research is beginning to suggest that silence itself is beneficial, both physically and psychologically. Spending time in silence has been found to have positive effects on the body in terms of reducing blood pressure, boosting the immune system, reducing blood cortisol, promoting hormone regulation, and prevention of arterial plaque formation. Psychological benefits of silence can include enhanced creativity, focus, self-control, self-awareness, perspective, and spirituality. Silence can be used both positively and negatively in communication, and thus can influence our relationships. Most of us clearly recognize the difference between a disapproving silence and that which affirms that what we are saying is being truly listened to. The use of silence in communication is also culturally bound and can mean different things in different contexts. Internal versus external noise. In a public place, very rarely do you see someone just sitting. The minute they are alone, They check their phone and then use it to connect to some digital input. Are we so unwilling to be alone with ourselves, and what is the level of noise in our society and the absence of silence doing to our mental health? I have already said that silence is more than the absence of noise. Our internal chatter also contributes to the lack of silence in our lives. The constant pressure of the list of things we need to do in our heads, plus our culturally driven self-evaluations, often make us uncomfortable just sitting and being. Perhaps it's no wonder we immediately check our email or social media as a distraction. This can then become a vicious circle, as we then have even more things to attend to or compare ourselves with. The Paradox of Silence, Ross, 2014, suggests that silence is both context and process. It is both our natural state, having being operate openly with silence in our lives. The potential benefits to health and well-being are huge. Roots into silence. As suggested above, silence is not necessarily linked to the environment. Experienced meditators can achieve non-reactive states of presence in even very disruptive situations. However, for most people, learning to use silence positively does involve relative quiet, and various forms of meditation training, retreats, and wilderness experiences have tapped into this. But accessing the power of silence does not have to cost money. Open curiosity and the willingness to encounter yourself in silence are the most important resources. Spending time in nature can be just sitting in your garden or going for a walk. Learning to meditate can be achieved by accessing many of the free web resources, and going on retreat can be simply sitting in your local church quietly during your lunch hour. As a practicing Christian, I can tell you no one will mind you doing this, and belief in God is definitely not a prerequisite for being there. The potential healing available in silence and being without difficult thoughts is not always pleasant or comfortable, and this is one of the reasons that many people abandon meditation. Learning to use the power of silence has wonderful potential to improve our lives and is free to all with the persistence to cultivate it. Reference Ross, M. 2014. Silence, A User's Guide. London. Darton, Longman, and Todd Litted. About the author. Sarah Monk is a student on the MAP course at Buckinghamshire New University. She has a degree in psychology from Southampton University and an MSc in clinical psychology from the University of Surrey. She has voluntary roles with a number of charities and lives well with CFS. The final reflection. So the next time you sit in silence, don't run from it. Lean into it. Listen to the space between your thoughts. There's wisdom there. There's healing there. Because silence doesn't mean nothing is happening. It means everything is settling into place. And when you can be silent, truly silent, you become untouchable. Because the world can only control what it can disturb. And nothing disturbs a quiet mind. Silence isn't weakness. It's strength. It's the sound of self-mastery. In a world that speaks too much, be the one who listens.